Hey, welcome to the channel. This is my very first voiceover video. It's sort of experimental still, so I don't know if it's good, but I hope you enjoy nonetheless. Before anything, a disclaimer. This video is not intended to be a tutorial or a how to tattoo video. Really, my goal for this video and this channel and the videos in the future is maybe to provide insight to anyone who is interested in the subject of tattooing, to hopefully answer questions that you may not have even thought of, for future potential collectors that don't have any tattoos and is thinking of getting tattooed in the future, but you don't know how to go about the process of tattooing, how to find an artist or approach an artist, how the pricing goes, aftercare, and everything in between. Maybe you have tattoos already. Maybe you are a tattoo artist that's just starting out. Maybe you want to become a tattooer or an apprentice, or maybe you are a veteran artist. Hopefully I'll be able to teach or educate someone or entertain or quench a curious question. And if it helps one person, then that would make me very happy. At the same time, I can learn from fellow artists that are just passing by, watching this video and would like to comment any suggestions or tips, etc. That would also be a success, because I like to learn and my goal is to grow as an artist. But that's my introduction. I hope you enjoy the video. So this is a piece I started recently. This was all done in one session, and we are currently far from finished. You can tell also, like on the sides of this piece later on when you finish, that it's not quite rendered just yet. But anyway, the client wants a full sleeve. This one took around 6 or so hours of tattoo time, the breaks not included, and the client sat very well. So Oscar, if you are watching, thank you for the trust, and I can't wait to do another session. If anyone is interested, the following are my entire setup for this piece, and here are my tools. For my tattoo machine, I'm using the Axys Rotary machine, Valhala, I believe. I think that's what it's called. It was a gift from a good friend of mine and fellow artist. The inks that I used were Dynamic Triple Black, Dynamic White, Eternal Inks 20% Gray, and 40% Gray. It can also be it's also technically called color, or what I call black and white instead of black and gray. I think there's a difference. Black and white style, which is what I'm doing right now, is using opaque inks that are basically black but white ink mixed in it. Or they use a base of white and then they mix in a little bit of black, and so it turns gray. Black and gray, or also called gray wash. It's just black ink, and the other ink caps contain some parts black and water combined, which are called wash. I do mostly use opaques, sometimes opaques and gray wash, and sometimes gray wash, just gray wash, which I did most of during the first few years in my career. That's always fun, but I like to mix it up sometimes. Lately, it's just been mostly opaque grays. So the needles that I used, from smallest to largest, I used Cheyenne's standard 5 round liner, which really I only used at the end actually for the white ink. Then we have Kwadron's 7-round shader. That's another standard one. A standard 9 curved mag, and a 17 curved mag bugpin. All three are Kwadron. Kwadron's pretty expensive, but it's worth it. I used to be all about Cheyennes, but I think I like Kwadron's better now. So excuse the look for now. Most of my beginning stages when tattooing is quite messy, as you can see, but I do have reasons for it, and I will explain that very soon. If I'm honest, the beginning stages of my pieces look pretty terrible and messy. Obviously it's not the finished piece. I mean, like ink all over the skin. I rarely wipe the skin or the ink off. I will dab paper towel over the skin and get rid of the blood, but overall the rendering will come later on and it will eventually come together. With my style, I don't outline my tattoos. It's one of the reasons it's messy, and you'll find out in a little bit. But some artists do outline their tattoos. They lay down very thin outlines and they'll come back and do the shading. Some artists simply bloodline, which is the same as regular outlining except with no ink, very, very watered down ink, or simply use distilled water or even just witch hazel. The good thing with outlining tattoos is basically having a permanent stencil, so even if you didn't finish all of the shading, the client can always come back another time and the artist won't have to re-stencil the design. Now, that is very helpful because sometimes clients may tap out, or an event happens and the session has to be stopped earlier than expected. Whether it's because it's in a tough or sensitive area of the body, maybe the artist works slow, or because clients simply can't withstand the pain. Bloodlining without actual ink, basically it's just using witch hazel or water, is the same as earlier, but obviously with no ink or barely any ink. The reason artists do this is because, again, it's like having a guideline throughout the session. When the skin is bloodlined, those outlines become very red due to the trauma or breaking of the skin. It's great because the artist does not have to worry about the actual stencil wiping off, right? So every artist, especially in the beginning of our careers, has had at least one situation where we're tattooing, having a good time, then accidentally wiping off part of the stencil, and that is a pretty scary situation. When that happens, because that stencil is your guide, it shows you where the lines are. It shows where your shadows start or end. It's basically your map. So imagine you've tattooed half of a portrait, then wipe off the other half of the stencil. That'll be very challenging, making it look exactly like the reference photo. In my style, which is realism, I don't do solid outlines because I want it to look as realistic as possible. And we all know that there are no outlines in the real world or in nature. What we see are basically just lights and shadows and the contrasts. And the second reason I don't outline is because it saves me time. I don't have to do an extra layer of outlines, which can take a while. I do a lot of large-scale pieces or pieces that take more than one session, like sleeves or socks or pack pieces and the like. So if I can provide a bit more relief for my clients without sacrificing quality, I will. what I do is I go straight to tattooing, but I will sort of map it out by a lot of the times tattooing the darker areas first, or medium to dark areas first, and I'll do the rest of the detailing later on. Now, yes, there were times where I had to do very light outlines, and when it happens, normally, say we have been tattooing for quite a while, it's been a long day, and the client is very much in pain, and their skin is already raw, and every wipe of the paper towel feels like it's sandpaper. Sometimes the wiping is even more painful than the actual tattooing. When I notice that and I still have some work to do, and I feel like the client is close to tapping out, I will go ahead and start doing some very light outlines, so that next time they come back, I would just go straight to tattooing instead of redoing the stencil, because matching the stencil over a partially done tattoo can be very difficult and challenging, especially if you're trying to align it perfectly, right? With faces or portraits, or exact lines. I mean, with faces, if you are a millimeter off, it'll look like a completely different person. Now, I am exaggerating, but really not by much. You'll just sort of look at the portrait and feel like something is off. So we are nearing the end of this video. I think at this point my client was very much in pain already, and good thing it's already mapped out. I mean, we could stop now or even earlier, because I don't need the stencil anymore. So that's when I start wiping more and not really worried about my stencil wiping off. But here's the finished piece. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope maybe you've taken something from it, and I hope to see you next time.